Ever wonder what really happens when you bury a shipping container? Man, it was hard. It might sound like a good idea, but please don't ever try this unless you have at least $4,000 lying around and are prepared to work intensively for a whole month. And even if you build it, you'll soon find out that it was all for nothing. As you can see, the weight of the ground caused the curbside walls of the container to buckle in. Shipping containers can hold a lot of weight, but only on the corners, not on the sides. Here's a closer look. And don't forget about the water. What if the shipping container collapses and buries everyone inside? What if a secure shelter suddenly becomes a death trap for you and your entire family? Luckily, there's a better way. Way better, way cheaper, way safer, but most importantly, way easier than burying a shipping container. And it's also waterproof, so no matter how close the water table is, it won't bother you one bit. But just like you, I didn't know about it. Yet. I only started to bury my shipping container after I discovered my home was close to a strategic nuclear target. And with so many of them, yours might be as well. Ever wondered if you're living in one of America's death zones? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the U.S. nuclear target map, and you'll find out if you're living in a death zone. Once a nuke is heading your way, you might think that there isn't much left to do. But you would be wrong, because I'll show you America's natural nuclear bunkers that are also EMP-proof. When the sirens start wailing, all you need to do is pick the closest one to your home where you can take cover before it hits. Sometimes, shelter is so close, but you have no clue about it. You could be sitting right on top of it this very second. That's the case in Detroit, where just 1,200 feet below the city, there's a salt mine outfitted with everything you need, and that could easily shelter the entire population of the city. Other cities like Houston and Cleveland are also situated over similar salt mines. In fact, every state has at least 5 natural nuclear bunkers, and I'm willing to bet at least one is within a life-saving distance from your house. But that's not all, because I'll show you an ingenious method of having a unique kind of root cellar in your backyard or under your house that is designed to also protect you from disasters like famines, hurricanes, EMPs, looters, tornadoes, bullets, and even fallout and radiation after a nuclear blast. Most importantly, it will preserve your water and food reserves year-round, just like your grandparents' root cellars. But it's a lot easier to build. In fact, it's the coolest thing I've ever added to my small backyard. My name is Tom Griffith. I'm a retired 60-year-old nuclear safeguard inspector, and I'm by no means a doomsday prepper. I do prepare, but the old-fashioned way, just like our grandparents did when they put aside some food each year for winter or hard times. Many years ago, when my hands became progressively stiffer with arthritis, I knew that bugging out was no longer an option for me. Leave that to the young people who are still able to deal with the many hardships of living isolated in the woods. And even for the young, this should be a last resort. Bugging out to live off the land is a fairy tale for most. What are you going to do when 10,000 other folks bug out to your part of the woods? Bye-bye game animals, fish, or edible plants. Or if someone assumes they will bug out to the country, we of the country are not going to be that welcoming of intruders on our property. Bugging out and not belonging to that area could get you killed quicker than any of the other reasons. Now, you probably don't consider your small neighborhood or dead-end street a community, but let some disaster happen, and you'll see humans come together for safety and support, at least in the beginning. Listen, even if you have only 2 weeks' worth of food and water at home, that is nothing to sneeze at. So my advice is to find a way to stay at home and bug in. Leave only if you really have to, and only after I've shown you where you can find the closest natural bunker to your home. Our grandparents had their root cellars, and not only did they have supplies for months there, but it was also a place to take shelter when a storm hit or in times of crisis. So I decided to find a simple way to have a root cellar where I can keep all my stockpiles and everything that I grow in my backyard without it spoiling, but also to serve as a shelter for me and my family, one that can withstand hurricanes, tornadoes, and even nuclear fallout. It also had to be hidden from looters after an EMP and supplies you with food and water in an economic crisis, safety during civil unrest, or anything else you can think of. While I did find other ways to make a root cellar or a bunker, they were all either too time-consuming or too expensive, $10,000 or more. That's when something really strange happened. One day, I saw my neighbor Jerry slowly climbing out from somewhere below his backyard. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but looking closely, I saw stairs leading into the ground and realized he must have built something, like a hidden basement. To say I was intrigued would be an understatement. Why? Jerry is a 70-year-old disabled war veteran living on a fixed income. He became a prisoner of war after stepping on a mine and losing his leg in Nam. For a whole year, he was taken from camp to camp and bunker to bunker and endured incredible hardships. Through forced labor, hunger, and constant beatings, Jerry found one thing to focus on to keep himself sane. He planned to escape one day and reveal all he had seen and learned during his captivity. One thing in particular caught his eye more than anything else: the bunkers being built with a speed and ease Jerry had never seen before. When he served in the U.S. Army, Jerry helped build the American bunkers, which took 5 men working for weeks to make and were quite exposed. The Vietnamese bunkers, on the other hand, were completely different. You see, the Viet Cong had become master builders because they were forced to adapt to some of the deadliest conditions known to man. They didn't have bricks or mortar, but they still managed to build underground shelters that were strong enough to withstand the constant pounding of powerful American bombs. This is where they kept all their food and tactical supplies. The Viet Cong bunkers were so efficient that the CIA estimated that for every 100 bombs dropped on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, just one North Vietnamese soldier died. On the day he was rescued, Jerry weighed 95 pounds at the most. He was so fragile they had to feed him through a tube for days. The intel he provided on enemy tactics ended up saving countless American lives, so the Army gave Jerry a medal and a plane ticket back to the U.S. While the war was soon over and American soldiers were happily returning to their families, for Jerry, the struggle continued. Things that most people take for granted don't come easy at all for Jerry. Losing his leg early in life meant he had to learn to do things differently, without hard physical work or breaking the bank. Jerry never complained about his disability and never asked for or expected help from anyone. He is truly a hero, but he never bragged about it. Instead, he is probably the most self-reliant man I know. What he built in his backyard was a unique kind of root cellar. But here comes the truly shocking part. It only took Jerry a week to get it done, on his own. When I went down the stairs, I felt as if I had traveled back in time, right to my grandfather's root cellar. While smaller, at probably 150 square feet, everything else was exactly the same. Even that old smell I missed so much. Jerry had all sorts of cans, rice, beans, and jerky hanging from the ceiling, but he also had modern supplies like Progresso soup, pasta, peanut butter, dry goods, candles, water bottles, meds, an AR-15, a really big ammo box, and a lot more that I'll tell you about soon. Jerry affectionately called it his life cellar, and I could really see why. This thing could keep you and your whole family alive for months, even years, with no outside help. He also improvised a homemade ventilation system. When I examined it closely, I realized that his so-called charcoal life vent would actually be able to filter out almost everything you can think of, including radioactive particles. By this point, I was dead curious to find out just how my one-legged old neighbor had achieved all this in one short week. A generous and kind man, in spite of the many horrors he had witnessed, Jerry smiled and offered to share everything he knew with me. The life cellar he had built in his backyard was a brilliant mix of three things. 1. Jerry had always wanted to have an old-fashioned root cellar just like his great-grandparents had. This is where they kept all their harvest from spoiling.